Um, so then the second thing was, um, off the bat, I wanted to bring up a conversation that we had when I was in Walla Walla. And you said, uh, I forget what we were discussing. If we were discussing,
Cultural appropriation?
well, oh, we talked about that too. The one thing I was gonna just bring up was actually not even related to the topic per se, but um, you had said something like that I was coming off. Um, I don't know what you said exactly, but something like I was mean in how I was saying it. So I wanted to apologize for that and to tell
Oh
you
my
that,
god.
yeah, I don't, I never mean to be rude or something like that. But in like difficult conversations, sometimes you have this, or I have this, I have a mode of processing my thoughts in which it always comes out like mean to people, I think. So
Well, actually, I
that's
think I
like what
remember
I'm
what I
trying to work
said.
on. Yeah.
I think I remember what I was trying to say. I think I said it seems as though you're trying to be the devil's advocate for any point that I bring up. But I was saying that in a way that I don't think that's necessarily a negative thing, because that's exactly how Chris is. And I admire that characteristic in him because too many people are just accepting of things that they hear. And I really appreciate that you take a stance as though you almost position yourself like intellectually in a place where anytime that you're presented with a new idea, you first challenge it. And I think that's a really positive trait. And I'm sorry if that came across that I thought you were being mean, or that's not at all how I felt or how I currently feel. I think that you're actually very civil in the way that you carry on your conversations, which is why I want to do this, is because
Hmm.
unfortunately, especially in America, people are not civil. Just yesterday on Facebook, I just saw some just pure garbage being spewed back and forth. And it was just like shocking to me. I keep getting re-shocked. I was like re-shocked when I realized that people think it's okay just from hearing one or two sentences from what someone says, they think it's okay to respond and say you are immature, stupid, and your perception of reality is skewed. Like,
Yeah.
in what universe is it ever okay to tell another human being that? But welcome to 2017. Civil rhetoric has gone out the window. I don't know
Yeah.
if we can ever go back.
Yeah. I guess I guess that kind of presupposes that we've ever had civil rhetoric, which oh shit, I think she'll call me back or join the call again. You hit a
Hey,
button? Hey.
uh, one second. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh. I can't see you anymore. Oh, there we go. Oh, but I can't hear you now. No. Oh,
How about now?
yeah. Now I can. What? Oh, there we go. Uh, yeah, I can't hear what you're saying. I don't know if your headphones are plugged in. Are they? Hear what you're saying. Ah, I could. Oh, there we go.
Okay, I need to take off my phone case.
Oh, for the headphone
Then,
jack.
yeah, and then my headphones will work better, I think.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. My case does the exact same thing.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, all good.
Okay. Okay, good, good. That's good.
Yeah. So I don't
Sorry,
think
what were
that
you
we
saying?
had. Um, I mean, if you as a snapshot of human history, I'm not sure that we've ever had a place where we've had amazing civil rhetoric, even in
That's true.
even in the courts of the Greeks, for example, or
Yeah.
you know, people are just really emotional and they often turn to violence. It's just like a shitty consequence of being of the human condition. Uh,
It's just hilarious that like we're such an educated, technologically advanced society,
right.
and yet we just throw pure shit at each other on Facebook.
Yeah, we're such bad communicators. Like
I
really,
know.
really. Like we can communicate really long distance, but really ineffectively. Like even in relationships, right? Like
I know.
the okay, like a perfect example is the fact that I'd like apologized to you today. I perceived that whole scenario as something totally different than you did. And also I was like okay, I'm definitely going to apologize to Heather because I don't want her to feel like I was being a dick or trying to be a dick, and just like that whole thought process is like something that you feel scared to do almost. So like,
Yeah.
right? So like we don't applaud apology. We don't
Mhm.
we reward people who like lie to get success and stuff like that, right?
Right.
So and then okay, another like huge concept that I was thinking of when you said about the Facebook person. Um, there's this whole concept of philosophical charity,
Uh huh.
and which is like the whole point of the argument essentially is to assume, like, first of all, assume that your debate partner has really good intentions, or
Yeah.
the best possible intentions, and then secondly, assume that they're making the best point that they can seem to be making. So like if you can misunderstand something, try your best to understand the best possible argument that they're trying to make,
Mhm.
and then approach it there. So yeah, but like nobody does that, and nobody's interested
No.
in charity, or seemingly, I don't know.
And even just from an approach of like, so I'm a communications major, so we spent a lot of time learning about how to get people to change their minds and
Mm-hmm.
how to get people to even just as simple as admit that they're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And like the by far, like researchers have shown again and again and again, and this like goes all the way back to like I don't know, when was the book How to Win Friends and Influence People first published? I think
Yeah,
like the
Dale Carnegie,
19.
like 73,
Yeah,
I think. Yeah.
yeah. So even that book like the first rule was simply it's so basic. Like if you tell someone they're wrong, they will never ever ever change their mind.
Yeah, you catch more bees with honey, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And yet everyone just goes around saying like you're wrong, and then they get angry because the other person feels offended. They're like, well, you just want to get offended at everything I say. Like,
Right. Um,
uh.
yeah, that's a that's a that's a funny snapshot of our current political discourse. You just want to get offended. That's really good. Yeah, I mean, right, but it's like it's so easy to just be like, "Oh, here's why you're wrong." Right? Also, I think like certain like I know that there are some people that I cannot tell them I'm wrong, and then there are some people or tell them that they're wrong, but there are some people that I can say like, "You're wrong about this. This is why you should change your mind." And they will change their mind, but like only like really 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 close friends. There's like a handful of people I can do that with, but I don't think you can do that with a stranger off the street just because
I don't even
it's
know if I can do that with my fiance. I have
yeah.
to.
I feel like you could do it with
There's a
Chris.
series of steps. There's a series of steps. You have to first applaud the effort. That's step
Yeah.
one. Step two is you have to suggest that you may also be wrong and very frequently. And then step three is you subtly suggest that perhaps he is wrong. And oftentimes that fails. It doesn't go well. He's like, no,
Yeah. Yeah, it's like it's not easy. It's like in fact, I think like I know that I haven't had a girlfriend I could do that with. So
I'm wrong.
maybe
No.
there's something in like in like the something with the that type of relationship that's different.
Yeah.
But
I don't know.
because there's so much more in it. But yeah, I don't know. But yeah, also like that said, it's not that I can do that uh without any tact or anything like that. Like
Yeah.
I still have to have some tact with it, but like yeah, it's like I'd say it's like totally doable. Like Mark Thomas is a good example for me personally.
Oh,
Like
but
I can be
he's
like,
just a totally different soul, isn't he?
yeah, maybe, but yeah, it could be just Mark. Like maybe everyone can do that with Mark, but
I don't know.
yeah,
Huh.
Nice. So, I was gonna ask you about your before we get into any one issue, about your move to LA, because that's I just found out about that.
Oh yeah. Um,
So, are you in your new place? Is that where you are right now?
yeah. I'm in the new place. We've got a super rad porch, and it has views of the Malibu mountains.
You should show it to
And
me.
well, unfortunately, it's. Oh, it isn't dark. It isn't dark. I can show you. Hang on a second. Oh shoot. How do I? Can I not
Oh,
flip
there's
the
a
screen?
little. No, there should be on the screen. There
Oh,
should be a little
there it is.
flip button.
Wait. Now if I just click that. There we go. Okay, so
Nice.
in fact, you're just gonna catch the sunset.
Oh, beauty. Oh,
So
oh, that's a sick porch.
that's the mountains there,
Yeah.
and then there's a really great Mexican family right there. They're just the sweetest. And then
Did you
that's the
move to
sunset.
Mexico? That's like a dirt road. What's going on
I
there?
know. And then that's I don't know if you can see the like the lights of LA in the distance.
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah,
can you see the I-5? There's like a streak of cars in the
yeah, yeah,
horizon.
yeah. I can
That's
see
the
it.
I-5.
Nice.
So yeah, and then there's like literally mountains like right there. Like we can just walk about a mile and a half and we're on a
Yeah,
trail.
nice,
So it's actually really great, you know.
nice. That's great.
And like the
And
porch is huge.
yeah, that's awesome. You're gonna have some good afternoons on there and
Yeah,
evenings.
remember our engagement party? How we had like the
Lights.
canopy thing with the lights and the
Yeah.
table?
Mhm.
We're gonna do the same thing out here so that we can
Yeah.
grill and
Yeah.
have stuff like that.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
definitely. And
and
you got to
then
get a
this
bunch of
is.
plants out there.
Oh yeah, exactly. And then so I'll just show you really quick. This is like we have like a little upper loft up here. It's pretty
Nice.
cute. There's just like wall to wall windows, and then we have like a living room and kitchen out there. So like
Oh,
it's small, but
no, that's
it's
fine.
home.
That's you don't want anything big in LA.
No, not with the price tag.
So how much does that
So
cost in LA? So you have other than what you've shown me, you have a living room and a kitchen, right? Oh.
sorry, are you
Oh, there you are. Yeah.
yeah, so this is 600 a month, but we got a super great deal because I'm living with the son of a coworker. So he lives downstairs and we live in the studio loft upstairs.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
And sounds like Chris
So,
found a good job, so he sounded stoked about that.
yeah, he found a super great job. And yeah, so we're did he talk to you about his new job?
Yeah, yeah, he told me the gist of it. That's awesome.
Mhm.
How it
It's
went
going to
down.
be a good situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. And
So,
your
are you
job?
starting so I'm working at Adventist Health in Glendale,
Okay.
and I'm doing their marketing.
Oh wow. Awesome.
So,
So is it all the social media stuff or are you on a team or
um
like
yeah, it's actually like a whole series of things. It's marketing, but it's marketing for the foundation. So it's
right.
a nonprofit,
Mhm.
which is awesome. To be honest with you, I've always wanted to start a nonprofit. It's a big vision of mine. And so I think having a few years experience and seeing the administration side of a nonprofit work is going to be really great.
Oh yeah.
Um, and so it's basically like you're in charge of making campaigns for bringing in donations for the hospital,
Nice. Awesome.
which is pretty cool. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Great. Awesome. Nice. And you get to fund all that good research, so which is cool too. Yeah, so
yeah,
I think you were starting to ask about my program or when it starts and stuff like that. So I start
yeah.
next Wednesday, next Tuesday. Um, so I mean, it's just a couple. I have a couple courses and I have research I'm supposed to do. So that's all. Oh, I can't hear you anymore. Sounds like the can't hear you. No. Oh, I
How about
think I
now?
can. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Sweet.
I these are brand new earphones, but I think they might be broken.
Yeah. Are they just coming out or what are they?
No, it's just like if you bump them the tiniest bit, your voice, like currently your voice is really staticky. But I think it may be more of a problem with my phone than with the earbuds because this phone is really old, and I tried replacing the screen by myself. I feel like I may have mixed up a few screws or something.
Yeah, could
This
be.
phone is
Well,
like,
yeah, if it puts your mind at any ease, my phone like the software just started totally dying like 2 weeks ago, so I got it replaced, and then a week after I got it replaced, I destroyed the screen of the new phone. So now I have to
oh
get
no.
another one. So I understand your
No.
your pain in terms of phones right now.
Oh shoot, that's
Yeah.
awful.
Yeah, it sucks. It's fine though. So I haven't texted, like I can't answer calls. The phone still rings, but like the screen doesn't work and the touch screen doesn't work. So
Yeah.
and the screen doesn't turn on. So I can't like accept calls or like answer texts. So like
Yeah.
nobody knows my phone is down. I emailed like a couple, more important people.
Oh shoot.
But yeah, I'm in this limbo state right now. But hopefully it should get fixed in the next couple days.
Damn, that is such a bummer.
It's actually kind of cool
So
though,
sorry.
because like I'm starting to not be addicted to the phone, or like I'm
Yeah,
starting
you're
to
breaking the
like,
twitch, right?
yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Same thing happened when my phone screen shattered a couple weeks ago. It was like a whole week that I didn't check my own Instagram, and I had no clue like what was going on. Just break the twitch. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's good. Yeah. I'm taking the TV out of my living room, and putting it in the basement.
Hmm.
So I think that'll be nice too. I just hate. I don't know. As soon as it's in a living room, it becomes the centerpiece, and then that's a problem for me. I want to like
Right.
try to promote human interaction more. So
Right.
put it in the basement and have a movie room or something, and then it's
Yeah.
better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, talk to me about one of these topics. I know that you've been talking to Chris about politics and social
Yeah.
issues. So what do you want to dive into tonight?
I want to dive into what you seem to be more interested in, which in my experience has been like feminism or we talked about cultural appropriation a fair bit there, and also like women's issues, which I guess is feminism, but or also like the LGBT stuff, that whole topic, the transgender rights issues. I know we were talking about some of the transgender stuff about Canada too, which I'm pretty well read on, so that could be interesting or not to you. Um,
Hmm.
so
Sounds
anyway, yeah,
interesting.
whatever you're thinking
Um,
about right now.
to be honest with you, I've done some reading on LGBTQ plus rights, but I'm not very familiar as far as like the legal aspect of it, as far as how health insurance covers and things like that. So I'm not sure I'd
Yeah.
be able to be very informative about that as far as what it's like in America. For Canada, I have no clue. I just have this feeling that's probably better than America.
Yeah,
For
it's
any topic, I'm like, oh, it's probably better in Canada.
yeah, yeah, healthcare. um,
Yeah.
yeah, um, yeah. So, have you heard about this? So recently, Trump said he was going to ban all transgender. I think it was
From the
just
military.
transgender from the military. Yeah, what was that
Yeah.
about? That's ridiculous.
I didn't really read much about it. After a while, I just have to stop looking at it because if you look at it, then you read the comments. You just get angry, and also I have to realize that in order to fairly approach the topic, I couldn't just read about it from the New York Times. I also had to read about it from Fox and from Business Insider and MSNBC, and then just being like that level of like giving that many shits is not really in my life right now. So I heard about it and I was like, oh, but I don't really know the details on it myself.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't know
From what
much
I under,
other than he just tweeted that, oh, after reviewing with my generals and things like that, which his generals later denied. Like,
oh really?
yeah,
I didn't even know that.
yeah. I mean, lying is the norm in the United States right now.
Yeah.
So it's like not surprising. It's so ridiculous. It's so sad.
I
Um,
am so. I just have to know: is Canada just laughing at America every single day?
yeah, the whole world is. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
of course.
It's just obscene. It's okay. Here's actually that brings me to a topic that I actually would like to talk to you about. There is a or see what you think about it. There's been a criticism of the left's response to a lot of Trump stuff from a not from a moral position or anything, but from a like a Machiavellian or from like a strategy position, I guess.
Yeah.
And this has been promulgated mainly by two people that I know of, which who are Douglas Murray. He's a British political writer. He writes for one of the newspapers there, and Ben Shapiro, who you likely know. He's a Jewish political commentator in the States. He's got like a podcast and stuff, and he has a news website. So, but I've heard them both say once in an interview, actually both in different types of interviews, that what they've been most astounded at or most amazed at is that the way the New York Times and CNN responds to people like Don Lemon or I don't know who at New York Times, but the way that the narrative
Catherine
from the
Scholes and
who's that?
uh-oh.
Hello?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but I can't see you.
Okay. I think that might be your connection because I still see me.
Yeah, I still see me. You'll always see you.
Oh, okay.
Well, I can
Well,
hear you still, so
yeah,
that's okay.
keep talking.
We'll see if the video goes back. So you can't see me even, huh?
No, I can see you.
Oh, you can see me, but I can't see you.
No.
Yeah. So did you bump the camera button by chance?
No.
Okay. Oh, you're back
Turn it
anyway.
off and on.
You're back
Oh.
anyway.
Ah, I'm back.
So it worked.
Okay. Great.
Okay, so yeah, so essentially what these two guys have said, which I agree with, is the left, and I've actually seen a bit of people from the left starting to do this, and I'm using the left broadly, but it's not like everybody or anything like that.
Yeah.
There's this response of like hysteria, hysteria and moral. I don't know what you would call it, like moral outrage, I guess, of various things that Trump does, and then which is all like warranted, to be clear, but so there's like this whole hysteria and response to like anything that happens and calling everybody something and then just taking everything to the nth degree.
Yeah.
And to me it's very first year in nature. It's very like, yeah, that's your gut reaction, but then you have to, in my view, if you want to be strategic about actually swaying people's minds on the issue, kind of like we're talking about, convincing people of your perspective and things like that, then you actually have to make a response, and you have to say something sober and have a clear position on whatever the atrocity of the day that Trump has committed. So for me, like I wish that places like CNN and things like that would turn their emotion way down and turn their fact checking way up, and just like only respond to what actually exactly happened, and don't like conflate the issue with like a bunch of other stuff, and or also like inflate the issue to something that's like so much bigger than what it actually is. But I know that like that's not really in CNN's interest because it doesn't sell page clicks and stuff like that. But
Right. And Yeah,
it's just so
and I'm
frustrating. Like
off.
we could actually get a response, like we could actually get a good sober response, but then like nobody in the public sphere seems to be doing that.
I would agree. And I see that on a small scale, just like in Facebook conversations. Do you ever just scroll through your news feed and like people are like
Yeah,
posting pictures of their babies and their dogs and like their essential oils they're trying to sell everyone? And then you like stumble across a Facebook argument and you just browse through the comments and in like all of one comment it just turns into just like brutal people like ah and no one can make everyone's like well like I'm trying to think of an example but I can't think of a good one but just no one can make a sound argument that without their emotions involved like even for me I've taken so many classes where they've literally trained me to be a communicator in which I approach other people who are hot tempered and I've been trained to like stay calm and to just ask them questions and help guide their conversation to a point of calm resolve. And then I
yeah,
can offer them questions that kind of like move their own thinking process into a place that is actually quite logical. Even though I've been trained that way, the second that I see like a Facebook argument, it's like I as well find myself losing it. I always have to like review the
yeah,
comments, do a couple editing. I'm like, okay, how like terrible is this comment? I feel like it's just almost human nature in that people will naturally want to take sides. Once you take sides, when you sense a threat, people naturally want to fight back.
yeah. Well, it's actually well, that's exactly it. I mean, it's human nature, but it's also it's just it's an evolutionarily selected um, trait of our cognitive faculties to when we see opposition, we start to go into this fight or flight um, emotional mode of being, and so right, like as a communications major, likely you know like the kind of ways you can stop yourself from doing that. There's like people use like simple things, I guess. Like one thing that's helped me is counting down from 100. You just as soon as you notice, which is noticing is the hard part. You know, fixing it is actually much easier once you've noticed that you're starting to go a little crazy. But yeah, once you notice that, oh, I'm really riled up, just like 100, 99, 98, because it forces your left brain logical side to kick in, and you start putting more blood flow to that side of the brain, and you start thinking more in a
Oh, hey, that's really clever.
um, yeah, like logical way. Also, like doing math sums works too. 49 plus 32, you gotta like figure it out,
Yeah.
and then yeah, do stuff in your head.
Sit down, play a little classical music before you respond to the Facebook
Yeah, like do some
comment.
Tetris. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like don't take an axe to your shed. Yeah. Um,
Right.
yeah. um, so right, it's so hard. Like, god damn, and also it's like not taught. Like no one, no one learns this anywhere, right? Like no one's teaching this in school. No one's teaching it anywhere. It's really difficult. But yeah, yeah. The Facebook things. I mean, yeah. I mean, I get into them. I'd say fairly frequently, but I don't like. I like to think that I'm like pretty sober on there, but I don't know. There's been a couple times where like people end up just like this one chick said, uh, "Well, you're just like a straight white male, so I don't expect you to ever understand." That was like the end of the conversation. I was like, "Well,
And
I
what's
can't really like
funny,
have a response to that." Like,
and she probably like even just you saying that in like a very calm tone sounds incredibly bitchy. But when she said that, she probably earnestly just felt like, well, he's just a straight white male, so I can't expect him to understand. But it's just coming across like so terrible.
yeah,
How do you bridge that gap of communication? It's not even.
yeah.
I don't know.
No, it's tough. One thing that I use one tool I use fairly often is well, a lot of the issues of communication are simply issues of one side or the other misunderstanding the other side's
Mm.
either intent or the actual meaning of what of the words they're saying. So like really often once part of the conversation starts to get like a little bit inflammatory, I'll start by saying things like, "Oh, I don't think I said what the thing I just said in the most clear way," or like,
Right.
I don't think I'm communicating to you clearly.
Right.
Let me try to say it in a different way that or in a better way that's what I'm actually trying to say." And
Yeah.
I learned that from Sam Harris because
Ooh.
he starts off a lot of his podcasts when he's interviewing someone who he's likely to disagree with. He has this whole spiel where he goes, "Now, what I want from this discussion is, you know, in any topic we're talking about, I want your best arguments as you understand them. And so, if you've said something that I'm responding to or anything like that, and you think of a better way to say it, then I want you to stop me and say it in that better way.
Hmm.
And I want you and then also like if you've said anything in this conversation that you don't agree with, or that you sorry not that you don't agree with, if you said anything in this conversation that you think is going to be misconstrued or you didn't like the way it came out, we'll just snip that out of the conversation and
Cool.
we won't post it. So it's like from the get go, it's like so charitable, and then it's
Right.
like really easy to have like a sober conversation to begin with
Yeah.
because you know that the person is coming from a place of earnest.
Yeah. Hmm. Interesting.
Yeah, I just thought that was like so genius.
That is really genius. Another thing that I learned from reading, I've been reading How to Influence and Influence People lately. It's just so powerful. In fact, half the book is just devoted to ethical and kind conduct when you're having an argument with someone.
Yeah.
It's just like, here are the rules for having an argument. And one of the things that he said, before you say anything, first of all, be willing to apologize for saying that thing before you've even said it. Like, already lose your attachment and your pride to that thing. Be ready to
Yeah.
apologize for it. Another thing is, make it part of your conversation that you frequently use the phrase, "I'm frequently wrong, although I wonder if da 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 da."
Right. Yeah.
And so you don't set yourself up as being, a hard line for someone to fight against.
Right.
Which I think is really powerful because then there's cooperation in that conversation.
Yeah, and that's exactly it, right? It's you turn the conversation you guarantee that it's a conversation and not a debate, I guess, with
Yeah.
that. Or you more likely, yeah. And you or
Yeah.
it's a reminder to yourself and to them that it's a conversation and not a
Yeah.
debate, which is that's
Hey,
that's smart.
so my mom is visiting this weekend. She came into town and she's taking a nap right now, but I think she's going to wake up in about 30 minutes. And I do want to be able to, get into a really beefy conversation with you before I have to go. So tell me, what is it that you were kind of looking forward to talking about?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is just as interesting to me because this
I
teaches
know.
me how to be a more ethical person the more and more I talk about it. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, if you want to get it, like, yeah, I guess I'm a bit of at a loss of what because I don't know what we disagree about, and I feel like the more beefy
Hmm.
thing will be something we disagree about.
Well, how about the word feminism? I feel like that word most people disagree on, so we can start there and see where we end up.
Yeah, yeah. Um, well, maybe the best way to move forward is for me to define feminism as I understand it, and then maybe to comment a little bit on how I believe that that's been misused or at least not appropriations, multiplicities, I guess, or versions of feminism that I don't think are helpful.
Right.
So I mean, I just take the Webster's dictionary version of feminism to be authoritative for my own view. So I guess it would be helpful for me to just look that up and then to state it, just to be sure.
Webster's.
Or maybe not Webster's, but just here Google, and then they don't have a source,
What
but
about
let's just see
the
what Google says.
Oxford English Dictionary?
Sure.
I'm not sure about the editors of the Webster Um,
So
the
oxforddictionaries.com.
Oxford has been traced. It has a series of editors, and I do know that Oxford Dictionary.
Okay, so Oxford says the advocacy of women's rights on the ground of equality of the sexes. Um, and then
Hmm.
and then Webster. Let's just see.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to compare the two.
Yeah, I mean, if there isn't even, which is pretty much similar. So there's two, I guess, which is so the first one is the theory of the political, economic, and social equality of the sexes, and then the second is organized activity on behalf of women's rights and interest. Uh, and then Google just says the advocacy of women's rights based on the equality of the sexes. So that actually is the Oxford definition. So Google uses the Oxford English Dictionary, at least in this case.
That's cool.
Yeah. So I mean, that's a really broad and non-collectivized,
Right.
or that's a form that's a non-politically influenced definition of feminism, and it's not one that, when you say you're a feminist, it means a lot more than just that to a lot of people. But based on
It
that
does.
definition, I like, yep, I'm there, right? Um,
Yeah.
so
What about definitions you wouldn't agree with?
yeah, so I don't know of any other definitions to use to at least codified definitions that I would disagree with. I'm just ignorant of any other definitions, but what I would say is certain acts done in the name of feminism, I'm really not a fan of. So, for example, the concept of affirmative action, I think, is inherently sexist and racist, and that while the intent is like, I'm all for the intent and I'm all for non-sexist or racist manners of finding the same end. I think that most affirmative action acts are not beneficial, even to those it claims to um, support, or I guess make better. And then so that's one, like, kind of loose example, and then another would be the concepts of equity,
Uh-huh.
as they're defined by, like, a lot of more modern feminist groups. Um, so, for example, and then the use of equity as a uh, as a as a tool for the bringing about of demographic equality in any field or discipline.
What do you mean by equity?
So equity, right? So yeah, and that's a really good question, because also I don't have your video feed anymore. I don't know if you have mine, but
I think I'll be back in a second. I'm looking at the same definition right now.
oh, and you're on your phone. Yeah. You'll be back. Um, okay, so equity. Let's see what Google says. Yeah, so this isn't the definition I'm meaning it to mean. So the quality of being fair and impartial, obviously that's great. And then the value of the shares issued by a company. Okay, so yeah, the definition of equity I'm using is one that means equity is achieved when the demographics of any one group of people in a certain discipline or in a certain place or in a certain socioeconomic standing is equal to the larger group demographics. So, in other words, or does that make sense?
Can you explain it Yeah, I
Yeah, so
got a little lost there.
maybe in a different way. So what equity would be is because there are 50% men and 50% women
Uh-huh.
in society, then anywhere in society that we look, there should be 50% men and 50% women.
Right.
And when there isn't that, um, really the crux of this definition is, and this is something that's used like all the time. So this isn't like if you go to like a gender studies major and stuff like that, like this in a lot of schools, this is very common, this definition. So any instance that you can find, so for example, if you go to a lumber mill and you look for
Yeah.
50% men and 50% women, if you don't find 50% men and 50% women, then the fact that there isn't 50% is a result of sexism. And then this concept of equity is applied to like a ton of different things. So like underrepresentation
Okay.
of wealth, underrepresentation of yeah, like any socioeconomic or any expression of anything in any field, and then um, and then often there's a connotation that like of disagreement that any kind of disagreement with that fact is like is racist or is sexist or something. So the idea here is that,
Hmm.
and this is um this is the basis of a lot of affirmative action, um, and it's and yeah, I think it's an inherently misinformed
Hmm.
kind of philosophy. So
Interesting.
that's really my criticism of like modern feminism is just
Yeah.
that like it's it often becomes weirdly sexist in its own way.
Hmm.
But
Interesting.
yeah, um, yeah, and then we were also yeah. So yeah, I wonder what you think about that.
Hmm. Were you gonna say something else?
It's a different topic, so maybe after.
Yeah, I don't know. I found a definition on Wikipedia. I kind of like this definition
Of
because
feminism or
it brings
equity.
in the most of feminism.
Yeah.
And wait, I have to go back to it. Back, back, back. Uh, back again. Nope. Okay, sorry. I just have to go back to feminism Wikipedia. The reason why I
Yeah.
liked this definition is because it didn't make feminism about women. It made feminism about femininity, which I feel as though femininity is truly the thing that is that is under attack, and it makes more sense because women who are of a higher socioeconomic status, women who are white, women who are like born into a certain family or in a certain geographic location, they will have drastically different experiences than other women, and yet supposedly if you use this definition of sexism, then all women should be suffering equally, but that's simply not true.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, is okay. Yeah. Okay, sorry. Keep going.
so I like this. It says,
Oh, did I lose you?
no, I'm still here.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
trying to.
So yeah, so it says feminism is a range of political movements, ideologies, and social movements that share a common goal to define,
Right.
establish, and achieve political, economic, personal, and social rights for women.
Okay, although feminist, yeah, I'm reading a little bit further down. Although feminist advocacy is and has been mainly focused on women's rights, some feminists, including Bell Hooks, argue for the inclusion of men's liberation within its aims because men are also harmed by traditional gender roles.
Yeah.
So that I really like that because I feel as though the era in which women were harmed by sexism is pretty much over. The only way that it really remains is that there's a statistic out there. I'm really not sure. I think this is just based on studies of college students, based on surveys in colleges,
Yeah.
with the I can't remember what it's called. The in America we have like a certain law for colleges that they are required by law to report sexual assault. I can't remember what it's called, but anyway, so they tallied up all the sexual harassment reports and sexual assault reports, and then counted all the people who go to school, and then they also included a number, and I don't know how they determined this number, but it was a number of how many people admitted later that they did not make a report in college because they
Yeah.
felt stigmatized to making that report. So then they came up with a statistic that 1 in 4 women will be sexually assaulted while she's in college.
Yeah.
By the time she graduates college, 1 in 4 women. I personally believe that because while I was in college, I had 7 really, really, really close best friends. And out of those 7 women, 5 of them were either raped or forced to give a guy a blowjob when he just like she was drunk and he like held her head over his thing and like pulled and
Oh.
like dug his fingernails in. I know there's just
Yeah.
like all kinds of different stories. All collectively, if you were to like weed out maybe the stories that are a little gray and it's not really sure how to determine whose fault it is, I believe the 1 in 4 statistic still. I think it holds. And so
Yeah.
that's very powerful. Then you consider that domestic abuse, domestic violence kills more women than breast cancer. And so then that is
Although
terrifying.
breast cancer isn't a really like deadly cancer as cancers go anyway. I'm actually a breast cancer researcher, so
Really?
yeah, which is kind of cool. But as just a
Wow.
side note, but
That's
yeah,
so cool.
yeah.
Oh, thank God, because breast cancer runs in my family.
Oh yeah, you just call me up. Yeah, for sure.
I'll be like, hey,
Who should I
so
get to do my surgery? Yeah,
small thing.
yeah.
I got a lump.
Hopefully it's a small
Can
thing.
you help?
Yeah, yeah.
Does
No,
carrying your
it's.
phone in your bra cause cancer? Is that a thing?
I couldn't tell you that. I don't know.
Oh.
There would be. It
What
would
are
be
you
some.
studying?
There would just be some probability that it does. You can't. There's not a
Okay.
yes or no answer.
Interesting.
But
Right. Okay. So back to the feminism topic before I go off on a tangent. So it does seem as though women are still under daily attack, but women, we are currently in third wave feminism. Are you familiar with first wave, second wave, and third wave feminism?
yeah.
Okay. So we're currently in third wave feminism, which dramatically changes the current social climate. And I believe that this is not a woman issue anymore. This is a gender issue. This is a gender roles issue. And this is an issue where men, from the time they are little teeny tiny boys, they are trained to denounce anything that is considered feminine. Otherwise, they are a faggot. They're called that. And women, from the time that they're young, they're taught to embrace feminine things, and yet women grow up to kind of resist this and resist the urge to be domestic, and yet at the same time to kind of find her own way. So this is totally a gender issue. I think that it accounts for a lot of the reasons why men take to violence, why the suicide rate in men is higher than in women.
Yeah.
I think it accounts for why we have so many issues in our society simply with men failing to be in touch with their emotions because their emotions are demonized for being too feminine. Like, what the hell is wrong with a society that demonizes your emotional maturity? That's terrible. So yeah, that's my take on it.
Yeah, there's a lot in there. My God. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm with you there. I don't think you've said anything that I've disagreed with.
Uh-oh.
No, well, but there are some things that that kind of that I've been learning because I don't. Originally I was just like my interest in this debate was really just in response to stupid things that I would hear. So like just like some seemingly whiny brat, just whining about something on Facebook, or some college event that happened that was just like something so some stupid thing that I would hear, and I'd just be like, oh, that makes no sense to me, right?
Hmm.
So then, like, recently I've been trying to frame why we have this problem, right? Because seemingly for before like before the 1700s, there was nobody talking about feminism, right? Nobody's
Right.
talking about the problem of gender roles and the problem of any of this stuff. You brought up the point that you think that the role of the feminist movement, as it might have been stated in first and second wave feminism, is kind of over. Like, in other words, we've reached political equality, at least, or
Right.
what you might call like institutional equality, to borrow from the racism debate. Now, and you also bring up a really good point, that it's not about women. The debate about equality is not about whether or not you have a vagina anymore. It's way more about deeper, some deeper bias, or some deeper, something. And I would agree with that wholeheartedly. And I think it's the result of a couple different things. Um, so, so, well, one of the things that to frame this whole debate around feminism that I've been thinking about is, well, the first one is, there's a lot of there are it's the recognition that, yeah, okay, we have a lot of problems, and it's like really easy to point that out, and you can do that. It's really easy to point out the inefficiencies in any political system, or in any relation between two groups, or any
Mhm.
other subset of, or any other combination of peoples. And in fact, you can just do this like in your daily life, right? Like, it can come down to like it's really easy to point out problems in your daily life, like, oh, I had like some people over at my house last week, and they stayed for like the week, and so, but every night, every time after dinner, they would just put their dishes in the sink. And I started thinking, like, well, is the dish fairy just going to put them in the dishwasher? Like, what? And I was making all the meals because it's my house, and I was making them. I made homemade pasta. I made all these nice
Yeah.
meals and all this stuff. And then it's, oh, the dishes in the sink, yeah, and they're back in front of the TV. So eventually, I got to a point where I said, okay, I'm making dinner, and then you guys are cleaning up, right? Yep. Okay. So the point here is just that, like, okay, really easy to point out the problem, that they're just kind of not thinking about the fact that I'm being a dick. But it's like way harder to get the solution. Now, I was like cut pretty
Mhm.
tactful, and I made it sort of like a game, because I played on the fact that there's a trade-off, and so they could see the equality right in front of them, so they couldn't really
Right.
disagree.
Right.
But like, I could have been a dick about it and be like, hey, why the fuck aren't you guys doing your dishes? Like,
Yeah.
why am
Yeah.
I having to put the stuff in the dishwasher, right? And then,
Right.
so like, I'm not going to get the response. Okay, so
Right.
it seems like a lot of the criticism, that the feminists have nowadays, are like totally, or they have a lot of valid concerns, I would say.
Right.
But then the solutions that I hear, especially the really outlandish ones, like, deconstruct the patriarchy and let's start over, or like, we want to one of the um, one of those who are arguing in the racist debate is, we want to start science over. Like, we want to forget everything we've known. And ironically, like, she's on her phone right after, and like,
Yeah.
so there's these like, so the point here is like a similar point to like what a lot of people might say about like communism, for example. Like, amazing critique on the problems of our current system, terrible solution, right?
Yeah.
So for me, and then of course you blend in like the ability to debate and the ability to da 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 da. Do you need to go
I'm
soon?
still listening to you.
Okay.
No, no, it's fine. I have some food in the crock pot, and I'm just gonna get my mom a dish of chili out of the crock pot. But I'm listening to everything you're saying.
Okay. So you rightly point out that the issue isn't isn't women, or isn't just
Hmm.
men, logically
It's not
thinking.
biological.
I think the problem is biological, but I don't think that I don't think it's the sexual gender or whatever the right word to use is there, um,
Uh-huh.
of the parties that is the important thing here. I think the problem is, it's kind of threefold. The first one is that we have a problem that we don't know how to fix, which is subconscious bias,
Hmm.
and it's actually an evolved um, character trait, and it's evolved. It's selected for because it's really, 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 really useful. It was really, really, really useful for most of humanoid development. Like,
Uh-huh.
you need to be able to know what that something is a snake, and especially growing up, or especially living in the savannas, which is where human development, uh, most of our human development was. Um, like, you need to be able to tell what a snake is and what a person from another tribe looks like, because like they're gonna kill you. And it was like way more Darwinian than we experience
Yeah.
seemingly in our day-to-day lives. So like that's something that was selected for, and it's like really,
Right.
really hard to get it out of our system. And it was
Right.
also selected for, uh, positively, like even in the last, like up to the last 200 years, right? Like,
Uh-huh.
the ability to tell if someone was in a different tribe than you was something that you needed evolutionarily, and that
Right.
you needed to be able to tell.
Right.
Now in America
So,
in 2017, we don't need that anymore, but we're gonna have
right.
remnants of it, and like we're trying to
Right.
work through it. Okay, so that's like what I would describe as subconscious bias, and
So, I mean, but we've done a heck of a lot to reduce subconscious bias among among racial relations. I mean, it's not perfect, but
what have
it's
we
a
done for
lot better
what have
than we.
we've done a lot for conscious bias. I don't know about subconscious bias though. What have we done for subconscious bias?
Well, I mean, people are always going to think this way, but it's about how the subconscious bias relates to the action that comes from that subconscious bias,
Yeah.
and that's incredibly different. And it had to do with changing the segregation. And once we changed that, all of a sudden, people could see humanity in each other, and all of a sudden, it was okay to have mixed racial couples and for your kids to play with the black kids down the street. It became better, and I'm not saying that we've I'm not saying that we've solved the problem in 40 years, but we've done so much better to think what we did
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
I
No
mean,
kidding.
I was taking an American history class, and I was like floored to think that just 20 years ago, like, you still really couldn't marry a black guy without getting like the possibility of him getting beat up one day. Like, that's just crazy to me.
Yeah,
Um,
well, yeah, and that. So I would define those as all conscious bias. Mostly, not that they don't have an effect on subconscious bias, but those are all mostly conscious bias type things. What
okay.
I'm subconscious bias um is actually your subconscious mind responding, in neurochemical ways, that you're not in control of. So in other words, like the fact that your heart rate begins to increase when you see a black person more likely than it does when you see a white person, particularly in dark corners and creepy
Right.
places. And that's a subconscious bias. So you are illogically more afraid of the black guy in a suit than you are of the white guy in a hood because
But is
of
that
this subconscious bias, and that's unfortunately something we have to evolve out of.
biological though? I really don't think that children are born with that
Oh,
fear in them.
definitely. Oh, definitely.
I think
Yeah,
that's
in
just
fact,
something. I mean, our media more often than not portrays like the bad guy was a black guy from the hood, and he was wearing a hoodie, and he was carrying a
yeah.
wrench,
Yeah.
and he killed her right there. Like, that's the narrative that we've been taught since we were children. So we find similarities between real life and that narrative, even though that narrative is nothing but a stereotype.
Yeah, so there are studies that show that infants have racial bias towards members of their own race and against those of other races.
Are you serious?
Yeah,
But what
yeah.
kind of racial bias is it? Is it seeing a difference, or is it
So
preferring a difference?
their fear expressions um, increase when around someone not of the same race as them. Um, so so here's just the synopsis. Two studies by researchers at the Ontario Institute for Studies in Education at U of T and their collaborators in the US, UK, France, and China show that 6 to 9 months old infants demonstrate racial bias in favor of members of their own race and racial bias against the other races. Um, so older but not younger infants associate own faces with happy music and other race faces with sad music. And then in the other ones, infants rely more on gaze cues from own race than other race adults for learning under uncertainty. And then, yeah, and then, so these findings. Anyway, you can go to. Anyway, that's just to say that, like, it's not just, like, movies and stuff. It's, like, it starts way, way earlier, and it's, like, really difficult to get it out because you're going to grow up with the family you have, right? Even if it's, like, 100% uh, nurture and there's no nature, there's no when you're saying biological, you mean uh, um, genomic, or you mean genetic,
Right.
right? That's what you mean, right? You're saying it's not genetic, it's learned. In other words, which it could be. I mean, there's no who knows, right? But even if it is learned, it's like, well, the first thing that you see when you come out of the womb or you spend any meaningful time with is going to be your parents. And so
Right.
you're gonna, like, it's not like we have a lot. It's not like we're logical in any mathematical sense as people. We're just gonna, like, associate things that look like our parents as good and things that don't look like our
Yeah.
parents as bad. So it's like, that's all just to say, like, it's okay. It's like really, really, really hard to get racism out of people because it's so built in.
Yeah.
Um, and it's they do have it's cool that this has been tried, but it unfortunately it doesn't work. The like subconscious bias training and stuff like that they
Yeah.
do. There's, like, all these studies that say that it actually makes it worse
Oh
because
shoot.
it, yeah, and it's like, but it's still, people still take it and have to do it. But it comes off as, this was actually, like, the whole basis of the Google memo. Did you hear about that in the news?
No.
There's this Google employee that got fired because he wrote this, like, 10-page thing on gender issues in the workplace, and Google, it wasn't to Google's liking, so they fired him. And then he was getting all this support from certain people saying, well, he wasn't saying anything sexist or anything. He was just pointing out that, a lot of the solutions weren't working and things like that. But it was labeled as racist or sexist and stuff. But the whole reason he wrote it was because he had to do one of these subconscious bias training things or whatever, and he felt as though he wasn't able to say what he thought. His He would say something, and then the instructor would tell him that that was sexist and that he had to do something else. So very top down, and so you're not going to teach somebody that way. That's not that's
No.
like, good luck. So
To the
anyway,
comment that you were saying earlier about, I'm gonna veer really hard left here. Um, the comment that you were saying earlier about things that people say that are just useless in its application, even if it comes from, in quite, you know, quite agreeable initiative,
yeah,
their application of that idea is just poorly done.
or the
And you mentioned like
solution, yeah,
deconstructing, yeah, and you mentioned that like she said we need to deconstruct the patriarchy, and I was kind of thinking that for a little bit after you said that, like I I wonder if that was so far off simply because we've been talking about subconscious bias and how difficult it can be,
yeah,
but the thing is, like, I think you said earlier that institutionally we've overcome sexism, but I mean, I'm thinking about every single institution that we have in America. Like we have government, and I think about how little women are represented. I think in government we have less than 4% females in American
In
government roles.
well, I wouldn't know, but well, maybe if you mean um in roles like senators and things like that. If you take like the House and the Senate and the Legislative Assembly and stuff like that, maybe. But not generally in government. No. But yeah, okay, yeah, right. Well, there is some type of demographic underrepresentation. If you, yeah,
Right. And
yeah,
then the next institution I can think of is religion. Definitely don't really have many female pastors at all. We've never had
yeah.
a female pope, but I don't have hopes on that ever happening. Then the next institution I can think of is, higher education, our colleges. Don't really, I mean, we do have a lot of female teachers, but in colleges it's just starting to shift into having female teachers with a lot of PhDs, especially in STEM majors. Um, I don't know, have we ever had a female engineering professor at Wallowa University? I can't think of one.
Oh yeah. There's a couple.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
That's good to know.
Melody
Um,
Selby is one, and then
okay.
there's some math teachers as well. Yeah, maybe only one female that I
And
know of.
then,
I mean, that was when I was there. I don't know now.
right. And then think of like the home. Think of the home life on just a small scale of institutions in America. There's the family and there's the head of the household, and that is undeniably very male. It's a very masculine role. There's no femininity allowed in that role. It is the breadwinner. It is the head of the household. And I mean, I was filling out a W-4 form today for work, and it was just so weird. Like even the way that Americans pay their taxes, it's a very patriarchal system because you have to file so specifically just to go against the traditional I'm the head of the household, but my wife has a different job, and so therefore I have to like fill out a whole completely different format just if my wife has a job. Like the normal form that you're supposed to fill out, your wife isn't supposed to have a job. It just blows my mind.
Wait,
Um,
what? Wait, what form is this?
the
Is
W-4
crazy.
form.
This is ridiculous. What?
In fact, I have it up. I
W4.
can read it right now. Um, so in America, you get certain tax exemptions if you have children or if you're married. And
Right, yeah.
right. And then if your wife makes so much money, if your wife makes more than I think they said the cutoff point was like 1,600 in the past year, then you have to like you have to recalculate your tax exemptions just for your wife if she has a separate job.
Where does
So
it
if you're the
say
head of the
where
household,
does it say I see like spouse everywhere, but I don't see wife.
hang on, let me pull it up.
Yeah. In
Where's my
fact, I can
W4?
do a search of the document and it doesn't say the word wife
Right. So it
or
uses the word
female.
spouse. Hang on one
Yeah.
second.
Yeah. Right, but it does have this concept of head of household, which is kind of
Right.
wacky. Like why does there need to be a head of household?
Okay.
Or what is it?
So,
Maybe it defines head of household.
um, so as there's no genders involved in this,
Yeah.
but which I wonder if that's a new thing. There's no. Okay, so head of household is supposed to be if you pay more than 50% of the cost of keeping up a home for yourself and your
Well,
dependents.
where is this? What page is
At
this?
the very top of the W4.
Oh, okay. Uh,
So,
head of household.
okay. So it says here's the accommodation
This might
for
be the W4.
if you have two earners or multiple jobs, then it's showing that you need to turn to page 505 or paragraph 505 for details. And so if you scroll down to the bottom of the W4, I don't know.
So this says head of household. You can claim head of household filing status on your tax return only if you are unmarried and pay more than 50% of the costs of keeping up a home for yourself and your dependents. So if you're paying the most money, that's the definition of head of household. It's not like a
right.
cultural definition or anything like that. It's a tax they're making their own definition and calling that just for their own use, right? That's what the
Right,
whole
right,
point is there. Okay, so
right.
but what's the
So if you scroll down to page 2,
yeah
it's the deductions and adjustments worksheet. Are
yeah
you
here we
seeing
go.
what I'm seeing?
Yeah, I got the same one now.
Yeah. So, oh, cool. Do you have this thing in Canada, kind of?
We have similar ones. Yeah, we have federal. This is a federal form, so it's yeah we have
Right.
federal tax deductions forms. It's called the I don't know. I
So
forget what it's called.
this is kind of like a little bit of a worksheet calculator here
Mhm.
to find your, and it's it. When I read through this, it seemed to me as though accommodations were made, and therefore from the way the rhetoric in which this W4 form is explained, and part of this I'm not even really sure how to like fully
Communicate.
explain what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
like,
no, it can.
this.
It's really hard.
But
Yeah.
when I'm reading this rhetoric, I feel as though this W4 form originally was for the head of household earner, and accommodations were later made, and so then they had to change the rhetoric. Like it just, I'm not reading.
Well, that's
this,
probably what
feeling
happened
like,
anyway, right? Like,
right.
there's no. I mean, that's history, right? There's.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. But it just seems odd to me because like I'm a single earner, but I'm living with another single earner.
Yeah.
And it just seems like very interesting to me that I have to go through like 11 different categories to find me, and that like most of those categories are relating to a very nuclear family who's paying for 20,000 or more in childcare. That was one of the deductions.
What was that?
Family.
Where are you? You have to go through the things to.
Oh, so at the top of the personal allowances worksheet, it's A through H.
At
There's
the top
7
of
there.
the allowances worksheet, I'm seeing 1 through 10.
Oh, wait.
On page 2, deductions and
that
adjustments.
It's on page 1, the personal allowance worksheet.
Okay. Oh, here we go. So,
right.
Enter
So
1 for yourself if no one else can claim you as a dependent. Right. So that's you. You have.
Right.
And then if you're single and you only have one job, which is, do you consider yourself having one job or 2 jobs? Because you have Instagram too, right?
Just one job.
Yeah, because I guess Instagram doesn't pay you. Yeah, so you'd be 1. Enter 1 for your spouse.
Oh, it says 2,000. I thought it said 20,000 the first time I read it. I was like, who the hell spends 20,000 a year on childcare? Oh my god.
Oh, lots of people, but yeah.
I'm sure, but to think that would be like a form on your tax
yeah.
seemed insane.
Yeah, so you have zeros on everything else, though.
Right. And it just seems really odd to me that by the time I get to page 2 and I'm reading like the deductions and adjustments worksheet, it just seems like really odd that our society, and I don't know, this is kind of like the climax of a very long thing I've been stewing over for a while, even just involving marriages, and the way that in our society, women still are supposed to be very passive, and men are supposed to pursue women, and then men are supposed to buy a ring that traditionally is 3 months of his income and put it on her finger, and then they're supposed to get married. Like, marriage in itself just seems like so like, I'm having a difficult time trying to explain this idea, but marriage seems to undermine the ability of a woman to survive herself on her own, and marriage seems to undermine this like, especially the way that we go about marriage, and like the very like fake chivalry that we have through courting, right, in our society. It just seems very old.
Yeah, well, I actually have thought about this at length, and I'm pretty sure I will never get married. Or, like, I mean, the benefits of getting married would have to be so big for me to do it. It's just, I don't really see it as a feasibility in my current situation. To your point about, so this is all, okay, let's just finish up with the tax thing for half a second. I don't really see how it's sexist, but I can see how what you're saying about just that it's obviously, it obviously has a lot in there about spouses, and if you come from a place that where you've rejected like the concept of like traditional marital roles, you're going to be like, well, this is all bullshit. I don't care about marital roles, which it is obviously, and
Yeah.
so,
Actually, I'm
but
sorry.
the form actually makes it irrelevant for you, which is nice, I guess, in a sense, right? Like you can be
Right.
taxed as an individual, which is what
Right.
you would do in your case. Remember, this is
I'm sorry.
all
Do you
this.
mind if I
Yeah, go ahead.
do you mind if I interrupt you for a quick second?
Yeah,
You mentioned that thing about if we think about a better way to make our argument that we should say it.
yeah,
I realized that I just thought of why this was relevant when I was thinking about it and why I've had such a difficult time explaining it.
yeah.
So if I could, this will just be like a quick little
No,
insert for just
this
1
is
minute.
good because this is great.
Okay, right, because I realized I was just gonna spin you down like a direction that just wasn't even what I was trying to say.
Yeah, perfect.
So Chris told me that he believes he believes men have made more money than women. Men have been paid more because in our society, men are expected to provide for their wives, and guys are expected to pay for their girlfriends' food or whatever else.
Yeah.
And so it just makes sense that men have always been taken more seriously in their careers and they've been paid more, and there's just a bias there because men have a duty to provide. Women don't have that same expectation.
Certainly, and
that's
especially
what
certainly
I found in
given
the taxes.
given like Christian the dominance of Christianity before 1950, right? Like especially
Like a help me.
especially before then. But yeah, so
Right.
sorry, you were continuing on.
And when I was looking over my taxes, like it's 2017, and for some reason I get caught in this idea that you're like, oh, marriages can all be equal now. Like we can just be equal in our marriages. But when I was looking over that tax form, it dawned on me that the reason why people get tax breaks is because they're providing for their wives, and the government expects that if you're a head of the household and you're bringing most of the money, that you should get a tax break because all of your money is going to your wife.
Actually,
that
this is the opposite. Actually, this is so look at page 1. So this is all about um, dependence, right? So this has nothing to do the whole concept of head of household here has nothing to do with like Christian, like generic Christian roles. It has to do with the fact that you are one person making a tax claim that includes yourself and the financial burden that other people place on you because of the fact that they're your dependents. So whether it's like a spouse that makes no money or whether it's children. That's what they're that's what like B through G is all about here.
Right, but it's saying that they're your dependent, and the reason why that doesn't sit well with me is that why is my American government making so many accommodations for a spouse who's dependent on the head of the household to provide for them, be it a male or a female? That
Because
just doesn't sit well with me.
Well, okay, so right. Yeah, well, the reason so it is an accommodation, but what the accommodation is that the government allows every single person to be not taxed at all if you make under a certain amount of income. Right. So if you make in Canada the number's like $14,000 or something. So if you make under $14,000, the government is going to take any of your money because you're basically homeless, right? We don't tax homeless people on the donations they receive on the side of the road, right? Because they don't make any money. It's like, well, yeah, you can still get some health care and yeah, you can still get stuff because like we're all part of this like big social group that we've all agreed to.
Right.
But so the reason that they allow you to be called head of household on this document is because you've got, say you make $100,000 a year, but you've got 3 people, like 2 kids and a wife who doesn't work, right? Which is, that might be considered like a traditional Judeo-Christian household. Now you've got 14,000 for the wife, and then like it's less for kids. It's like 7,000 or 8,000 in Canada. Okay, so now there's $20,000 that you're essentially just giving to them because that's what the government allows them to receive non-taxed. So now we're going to remove that off of your taxable income. Say that's $20,000 worth total, or say it's 25 grand. now we're going to only tax you at 75, as if you made $75,000 a year, because you shouldn't be taxed on what they wouldn't have been taxed on. That's what that whole document is about.
Right. But
So it's accommodation, but it's accommodation of the fact that you as an individual, as a head of household, which obviously the government doesn't care if the head of household is lesbian, gay, woman, or man, but or any other description. But
right.
yeah. So
Yeah,
that's
I
what that
guess
document.
the only thing that really makes sense to me is like if I wanted to, like Chris jokes all the time that he wants to be a stay-at-home dad, you know. So if
Yeah.
I were ever to be head of household and Chris were to be a stay-at-home dad and take care of our, 7 dogs, then it would be great to be like, oh well, I don't have to be taxed on the money that Chris needs as a dependent,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
What doesn't sit well with me is that as I was filling out that form, I realized that for so many families in which the wife has been expected to stay home and that she is really and truly dependent on her husband for survival,
Yeah.
that is the like there's still tax benefits for that. And in a way it made sense. I knew I had to be there, but it just reminded me of how many families have this very unequal relationship where she's literally dependent on her husband for survival, which is a very I just find that so distasteful.
Yeah. Okay. So your grievance isn't particularly with the way the form is written. It's to do with the
No.
larger problem that women become like the choice to get married, whether independent of whatever influences actually caused her to make that choice or the couple to make that choice. Now she's financially dependent on the guy. And actually, we have like in Canada this would happen a lot. The guys that they would come home from war, these military guys, and they'd be married to some chick, and then they'd get their military pension at 55, and they'd divorce their wife, and the wife she'd be fucked because she has no skills. She was just a homemaker,
Mm-hmm.
No transferable skills to to make a decent wage in the marketplace, a changing marketplace, especially at the age of retirement. And they would leave. They would just ditch these. And this was before we had. This is why we created alimony, because alimony. You know what alimony is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this is why we created alimony, because these guys would ditch their 55-year-old wife. They'd find some 20-something-year-old chick, marry her, and then he'd presumably have amazing sex for the rest of his retirement. And then and whatever duties that the 55-year-old woman was doing, this 20-something would fulfill. And then so these 55-year-old women who essentially dedicated their life to the livelihood of themselves and their husbands, but all financially totally dependent on their husbands, just are totally screwed. So we kind of came up with this thing called alimony, where it was like, okay, well, you can't totally do that.
Right.
Which is like again, like based in a really good place, and definitely was important then. I think a little bit has been misused now,
Yeah.
but like not totally either. But yeah, so like I know a
Yeah.
guy who makes I know a guy who makes $200,000 a year, and his wife his wife wasn't working, and then she cheated on him, and then now he's got to pay her alimony of some ridiculous amount of money, like $4,000 a year, even though she's making 70 grand a year right now.
That's
Right?
why do we have alimony anymore when every young woman, in fact, there are more young women going to college than young men.
Yeah. Well, we have alimony because somebody has to change it, and it's going to be super highly politicized, right? But okay, so
I think
anyway,
it's time to change that.
yeah, I mean it's still kind of like necessary in some places, but what I was going to say is it's actually a really good argument against marriage, is what you've just brought up, especially like traditional Judeo-Christian formulations of marriage. Don't get married because you might get into a place where you don't end up working and you don't have skills, and then you never know what's going to happen, and God forbid it does. But if your husband divorces you 20 years from now, you're going to be fucked.
Right.
And like you should always be learning. You should always be gaining new skills,
Right.
not just for your financial protection in the future, but just for self development, for becoming an
Right.
interesting person when you're older. There's
Yeah.
lots of reasons to do that.
Yeah.
Um, you
Oh no,
said
I
some,
totally agree.
yeah,
I completely agree with that. See, my mom was really smart. This is just a side thing for my mom because she's
yeah,
amazing. When I was younger, she comes from a very fundamentalist Christian type of train of thought, and she said, Heather, I think that you should have go to college and get an education and make a career for yourself before you get married, even if it's just for a few years.
yeah,
Because she said, if your husband dies, can you take care of your kids? And I thought that was really smart that she said, because there were so many moms who were like, oh, you don't need to go to college. Like, most of the girls I grew up with never went to college, but she was really
yeah.
adamant that I should, because she believes that, like, every mother should have the capability to care for her children.
Yeah, well, it's a
Also,
huge responsibility, and yeah, really, you're responsible as the individual, not as a couple. I mean, you are as a couple too, but yeah, really, if the other one leaves, it's your responsibility as an individual to take care of them. And
exactly.
yeah, so yeah, I'm with you there. That's so
And, like,
awesome.
another
That's
thing,
such an awesome
scientists,
thing she did. That's really great.
yeah, and as another thing, I also think it's kind of ridiculous. Like, when I think about how for centuries, um, an entire woman's existence could have been done just by paying a housekeeper to work for about 5 hours, 6 hours in today's world,
Yeah.
just blows my mind. That hiring a housekeeper, hiring a housekeeper could have fulfilled a housekeeper and a prostitute. Hiring a housekeeper and a prostitute could have fulfilled the entire existence of a woman.
Well, I mean,
Blows my mind.
you kind of leave out child rearing there, but yeah,
A
I mean,
nanny?
maybe a nanny, but like, yeah, I mean, like, it you can. There's actually scientific research for as to why, or to point to the fact that children who receive parental instruction from like a lot of different persons in parental roles are like largely less successful than those in, and there could be like other factors, I guess, but like the point is that like the parents are the best people to fulfill the parental role, and that you also need like traditional male and traditional female. You don't need males and females, but you need what they traditionally brought to the table. Like a nurturing, you need a nurturing aspect to your parenting, and you need like a firm rule guide. Like,
Yeah,
and like single parents often like have to learn to play traditionally both roles,
yeah,
um, which is what my mom had to do. Like it would be really interesting because I learned, like a lot of kids do, to cuddle with my mom, but then like the next night she might be giving me the belt, right? Whereas like traditionally that's like not how you would maybe conceptualize it, but but yeah, you need those from a lot of places, and children with like step parents and stuff like that obviously a lot of times get
right.
like really tilted treatment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I was gonna. You said some really smart stuff about gender roles and how the kids are raised, and you brought up the term faggot, and um, you know little girls are brought up to be treated, to act in a certain way, and little boys are brought up to act a certain way, and then the way the boys interact with each other is a certain way, and then the way the girls interact with each other is a certain way. Um, so like the guys a lot of the time, um, especially in like puberty, um, the group mentality detests intellectualism and
Mhm.
and communication, like clear, sober communication, even in general. And whereas the women highly value it, right? Like they really value solving their own problems and coming towards a solution as a group. And this is actually like also how traditionally women approach problems. Like women in tech, for example, it turns out are way more likely to group up with guys or women, but like women are more likely to be found in a group solving a problem. They'll find solutions within because they'll take and hash out a problem. Whereas the men view problems typically, I guess, or right, typically as uh, opportunities to exhibit their excellence or dominance in a field, not dominance in like a patriarch way, but dominance in like a competitive way.
Yeah.
So and this is all taught, right? Like a lot of this is taught. I mean, there's some genetic stuff too, and I mean it's certainly evolved, but it's also taught. Um, and so the one thing, I mean, I don't really know how to approach the child rearing question. You really like I really have to like read some developmental psychology because I don't know what the psychological effects of, for example, raising up a girl to be a boy are, or what that turns out like, or let's say you took a girl and like never told her she was a girl and told her she was a boy and wrote, like what does that look like? I don't know. Like, is there something unhealthy about that? I don't know. I don't think it's sexist to ask that question, but I think it's sexist to presume that women should be a certain way or men should be a certain way. Like, yeah, you can wear whatever you want, or like, right? Who cares? Or act whatever way, or do whatever career you want. I think, like, one thing though that, like, going back to humility and charity, like, it's so easy to think you have a solution, especially with like the gender stuff. Like, I want to say, oh, well, what if we just did this, or what if we did that? But like, I know nothing about developmental psychology. I know nothing about like neurochemical imbalances and like the problems that people have and all these things, and so like I'm really wary to suggest solutions. And also, like, you don't want to, you don't. Someone told me this really good phrase once, and he says, eat the watermelon and spit out the seeds. And it's like a really good way to approach all this stuff. It's just like, yeah, don't like tear it down. Like, find out what's good about it. Keep that. Take the bad stuff out. Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah.
And then you want to think about raising kids, and you're like, oh man, now I know everything I ever do when I'm raising my kids is going to contribute like one way to the politics of this and to, everything else, and to,
I know.
yeah, so it's like, whoa, don't have kids, man.
Yeah. Did we just jinx? Were you gonna say
Yeah, I
the
think so.
same thing?
I said the same
What?
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
love it.
you intrigued me though when you spoke about marriage. Yeah, I use this tool of thought sometimes when I feel like I'm not able to think about something, and it's that if you assume the opposite of the norm is the norm, then it becomes interesting to talk about getting back to the norm that you're currently at. So, for example, like, let's assume that nobody ever got married, right? Or like really, really rarely people got married, right? Like, that was the norm. So like, your parents weren't married. There was like two people who hung out, and then they like did other stuff, but they raised you, but no one was like married. And then like Chris came to you and he was like, hey, we've been hanging out for a while, right? And yeah, I want to keep hanging out. And you're like, yeah, me too. No, I want you to promise me that we're going to keep hanging out until one of us dies. And you'd be like, okay, I guess. Like, here, I bought you a ring that was worth 3 months of my salary to show you how much I care about you. And you're like, wait, who's the guy behind you? Oh, that's a priest. You're going to promise me in front of God. So it's like, okay, yeah, like, there's a lot of good to this, but, like, I don't know about the whole thing. Yeah, so, oh, are you still there? Yeah, you're there, okay.
Oh my god, that's so funny.
Yeah, so, but it's a good tool of thought, like, to think about, like, certain, and then, like, a whole bunch of things start to arise in thought. Think about it that way.
Yeah. Oh, this has been such a good conversation. Unfortunately, my mom's eating dinner by herself. I really need to go join her.
Yeah.
I only get another night with her.
Go take care of
But
it.
hey, I want to do this again. This was really great.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll message you. I'm pretty free the rest of the week. I'll message you and see. I'm sure you're probably busy, but yeah, if you get a free evening sometime, send me a line, and maybe I'll be able to be free and we can do this again. So that would be really cool. And also, I think it'd be really cool. It might be too chaotic, but once Chris gets here, I think it'd be really cool to get his opinions too, because I don't know, sometimes his opinions just like get me into such a different headspace. I'm like, wow, I never even thought about it.
Yeah. Well, that's the
before.
utility of these types of conversations. That's why I'm doing them,
Right.
because there's so much stuff, and then I know people who like to think about them, but they're always thousands of kilometers away, so miles in your case, but yeah.
Kilometer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, hey, take care. Sorry, I keep bumping the home button in series.
okay.
Like, what's going on?
Yeah. Yeah, you too. And yeah, we'll try to do it again sometime soon. And I'll send you a link to the YouTube once I post this if you want to.
Cool. So when
Go
are you
back.
coming out to LA to visit us?
I've been talking about Christmas, so we'll see.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You should
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah, it'd be fun.
We were kind of thinking about doing a road trip across the Mexican border for Christmas.
Yeah. Tijuana. Be awesome.
That'd be really fun. I
Yeah.
think that'd be really cool. We could bring
Yeah.
John and Joelle.
Oh, yeah. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, that'd be dope. All right. Hey, I'll talk to you later. Take care.
'Kay.
Have a good night.
You too. Thanks again.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.